What up, familia? It's your favorite Puerto Rican Brooklyn Philly, and I'm back. I'm back with I believe what it's supposed to be a continuation from the last message. I uploaded the last message. The title that resonated in my spirit was "You Are Worthy of the Road Less Traveled." Um, Quick recap in that message, we were discussing the importance of going deep into what some would call the subconscious. Um, uh, it was called in the previous message facing our fears or facing the boogie monsters of our past. Um, Nevertheless, we were being called to self reflection, but for the purposes of metamorphosis, right? True inner alchemical transformation, I'm hearing, right? I'm hearing you are the philosopher's stone, right? Alchemy does exist, the alchemy of, of turning the lead within into the pure gold that it's always been, but that got, I'm hearing, calcified. That's interesting. Um, so there is a necessary burn that will then illuminate, right? I'm hearing shine bright like a diamond, shine forth and come forth as pure gold. Um, it is an internal journey that is being asked of you. And of course, not demanded. Uh, it is a personal one. Therefore, it must be a decision you make once you are ready. My belief is that if you are listening to this message, you either are ready or at minimum at the brink, right? Very close. At minimum have been contemplating or already have struggled back and forth with looking into the recesses of your mind, into the depths of your heart and soul, to look at the areas that if you're listening to this message, you have purposefully, right? And this is not placing blame, please, beloved. This is not meant for that. It is just an acknowledgement, right? There is accountability and responsibility are necessary. They're not punishment. But they are necessary components, I'm hearing, or variables to this journey, this process, this alchemical process within. Particularly for those of us who desire change, who desire this metamorphosis. I'm being reminded again, I know it's so cliche-ish by now, my nose is itching, thank you, that for me is symbolism of ancestors, my ancestors in particular, being present, and maybe some of yours. Yeah, I'm hearing, the great hall of witnesses urging you, but in a gentle, compassionate manner, right? Saying, whispering, I'm hearing, we're here, you're not alone. You will not be forsaken. I know it's fearful, you know. I hear now as if a very loving parental figure. I'm hearing it could be a nana, a Gigi, a abuela, or abuelo, pop, um, that is whispering, I'm here, you know, um, we will help you through this. We believe in you. You can do this, right? And the this being self-reflection, right? Introspection, but not at a surface level. Is going to require for us to remember, right? Both by mental going back and reaccounting events, but I'm hearing also remember the different members of our body that have become not only fragile but fractal, um, split. I just heard cognitive dissonance. Again, not placing blame, and a lot of it is, I'm hearing, unconscious and subconscious, because the body itself, after traumatic events, will, depending on the event, depending on the memory, right? Because it's different for all of us, will lock it away, I'm hearing. It is part of a survival mechanism, right? Your body is still a living organism who seeks one, homeostasis, and two, survival. It wants to survive and procreate, right? This living microcosm. I don't know what these words are, not in my everyday vocabulary. Not that I'm ignorant to them, but yeah. Typically, living things don't, come into living to then say, I just want to, my purpose to become a living thing is to then not be living anymore. The desire is to live and to thrive. And that's what I'm hearing Spirit say. You're ready for the next level, right? You've been asking and questioning yourself. And for those of you who believe in something greater than yourself, you have been calling out, I'm hearing clamoring and praying, and saying, I want this change. I want to make a change, right? You've been declaring the Michael Jackson maxim and saying, I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm asking myself to make some changes. And yes, I'm afraid, and yes, I don't know what to expect. But the pain to remain the same has gotten greater than the pain to change, I'm hearing. And when I said earlier about, the cliche of the butterfly, because a lot of people use that as an analogy, as an example, right? That the butterfly, typically when we hear the word metamorphosis, I know for me, that's usually the very first thing, one of the first associations I make, that the insect, the butterfly, goes through this metamorphosis. And if you are familiar with it, one of the most, for me, intriguing aspects of this whole metamorphosis, confirmation, right? That this caterpillar undergoes on its way to becoming this beautiful butterfly is this, that while they're in this cocoon stage, they're like completely liquefied. And I've said this before, and like literally divested of self. Everything is torn down, right? They're decomposed. They're no longer the same, right? Again, back to alchemy, right? Definitely an alchemical reaction, right? And that's what is being asked of you, right? And or you're asking of yourself, right? I should say. You have come to this realization that you have become too large for the small box or small space you have kept yourself in for quite some time. And you desire for change, and a change that you deem would make your situation better, right? Because again, one of the key aspects in the previous is to understand that when we're talking about change and, facing our, whether you call them demons, our boogie monsters, our fears, depending on, what language you like to utilize, we're talking about typically about beliefs and behaviors, not about our very essence or our core, right? innately who we are perfect. We're perfectly imperfect. There's nothing missing, nothing lacking. We are whole and beautifully complete just as who we are. Again, the very fact that you are listening to this video, that you are breathing, gives you that right to claim that, right? That you are this sacred consciousness, right? This sacred human being, right? Not doing, being. And you exist, and you exist with purpose. And you are unique to the unified existence of this globe. You are so rare that only you can add to to the collective consciousness what you can only add, right? Your unique fingerprint. And we need you. And we need you whole, WHOLE. You know, I've learned that, you know, I spent some time trying to be holy, HOLY. And what I found is that's not what I needed to focus on necessarily. But I wanted and change my perspective and intention to become holy, WHOLLY, in mind, body, and spirit, emotions, right? I wanted to be physically healthy, mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, emotionally healthy, right? And what that meant for me, right? Because that could look different for different of us, but there are some basics, right? So that's what this metamorphosis is about. And what we were discussing is that the first step is to do this self-reflection, this inventory, right? An honest inventory. And you know, I've heard radically honest, right? Not one where we're pointing the finger at everyone else and taking those things that would have victimized us and saying, well, I'm the victim. And that's just that. Understanding that there is and has been much more nuance to that. Accepting and assuming responsibility for our role as well. And then not staying stuck there or becoming stagnant there, but allowing this metamorphosis to then make us question ourselves and reflect and say, well, then how do I do something different, right? How do I heal, rectify this behavior, change this belief system, right? That has kept me possibly limited and stifled and stagnant for far too long, and at minimum in survival mode for far too long. Again, the next phase is calling you. You're calling yourself to thrive in such a way that you become this overflow, right? And that you're able to then share your beautiful uniqueness, but from a place of love rather than fear, and overflow as opposed to depletion. And one of the things when I read the card, I'm sorry, I have a sty and it hurts, and my one eye is, and not to mention that I already have, you know, issues with reading glasses, and I actually go this upcoming week to get some new glasses. But nevertheless, what was interesting when I read the card was that it actually said power and strength lie within our surrender to change, right? So it's interesting. You would think that power, and what was the other word that they wanted to, the other adjective to describe, and strength, right, are like these action words, right? These forceful, particularly, right? I don't know, I just heard dog eat dog, go after type of words. But there's, you know, it almost seems oxymoronic, like, or, you know, El opuesto, I'm hearing, right? So you're saying I'm going to gain power and strength through surrender? That doesn't seem, my throat went into lockup just saying that, right? That doesn't seem right. That's not what the 48 laws of power, is that how it is? Or these other people who have told me that I'm going to gain power, that I'm hearing little kid, money, power, and respect is what you need in life, right? That's not how I was told I'm going to get it. This is different, right? This is saying through surrender is how you gain power and strength, right? Which I believe is also then defining power and strength differently, maybe from those other examples that I gave, as well as your intention behind it, right? Why, what, not only what kind of power are you seeking, but why, as well as the strength. Is it to be power over people? Is it to dominate, to control, to overpower through brute strength, possibly? I don't know. These are questions we would have to ask of ourselves, but nevertheless, hence why the self-reflection needs to be done. And it is asking us to surrender, and surrender to I'm seeing like waving the white flag, weight, right? Surrender this weight, this load, right? Lay it down, I'm hearing, right? So that, and when I'm saying that, I'm thinking even of myself, how long, I try to perfectly control everything, just not to feel, quote unquote, the pain, just not to address or confront some of the issues that I knew were rumbling deep down, right? And again, no shame to myself or anyone, because a lot of it is our body protecting us in our mind, knowing what you may not just be ready for that just right now. And that's not a thing to feel embarrassed about, or definitely not ashamed about. It is just our reality, right? We're all at different levels on our journey, right? Particularly this journey of healing, of self-growth, right? And of self-respect. So yeah, that this metamorphosis is necessary, right? And part of the journey of healing. So first is addressing and understanding the misalignment, that there even is a misalignment, right? And once we're able to do that, then I'm hearing that's when the metamorphosis commences, right? And in that metamorphosis, I'm hearing we learned about learned and learn. Again, we're at different places about sorry, I tried to read it through the camera. Responding, not reacting. And there's a difference, right? There is a difference between responding and not reacting. They're telling me back up. They wanted me to look up the actual Webster's definition of metamorphosis, and I didn't do that. So I'm being backtracked to before I go. So there may be something for somebody. In the actual definition. So it indicates, well, I won't read it for the insect, we know. So the second one is a change of the form or nature of a thing or person into a completely different one by natural or supernatural means. And I heard, and let the church say amen, right? Amen and Ashe. Yeah, that once you do this self-reflection, right? This fearless, moral, radically honest self-inventory, and begin this process and go through this metamorphosis, that you will forever be changed. I'm hearing, behold, the old has gone, and and now you have become new. That's a scripture. I'm gonna go there again because I'm talking to different audiences, right? The old has passed away. Yes, the phrase "the old has passed away" is a quote from the Bible, specifically 2 Corinthians 5:17, which continues, "Behold, the new has come." Right? It signifies a new spiritual life and identity for a believer. In this context, they're talking about in Christ, but I'm speaking, I don't think that that's an exclusive language just to the Bible. I think that and my nose is itching, my ancestors are clapping, they're snapping their fingers, right? I'm seeing like a poetry club or a cafe, and they're, snapping their fingers. That this is very much something that's available to all humanity, right? And I don't know, Spirit, should I do that? So two things, and maybe this would be relevant for someone as well. All right, so many things that come into my mind. One of the things I heard this young lady say the other day was that back in the day, when soldiers, would go off into war, right, or individuals who were either drafted or enlisted in these wars would, I don't know what part of the world or where. You're saying look it up, okay? They would she said, and I never fact checked it, so maybe that's my spirit confirmation, that the soldiers would go and sleep in a coffin prior to going off to war. And it was supposed to be symbolic. Let's see. So this is saying that's not true. So I'll take that back. I don't know where she got that from. So it was a dramatic device in fiction rather than a historical practice. Thank you. So there you go. So this is not literal. This is like figuratively, right? It's something that was used in fiction. But the symbolism is what grabbed me, right? What it was supposedly personified was this acknowledgement that the old me has, kind of like the scripture, the old me has passed away, right? When the caterpillar is going through this metamorphosis in the cocoon, it has come back new, a whole new, right? It's a butterfly now. It has wings now. It can fly now. Where before it was this caterpillar that, inched through the earth, right? Now it had the ability, it had wings. It had the ability where at one point it was this very slow, arduous, long process, right, of just trying to get through and climb up a specific tree to go through this metamorphosis. Now it has this wings and it can fly back and forth and great distances, if I'm not mistaken. I heard that butterflies migrate. So, I just heard it opens up a whole new world, right? And that's what this metamorphosis can do for you, can do for me, can do for us, right? Because also we have to be mindful that this will be the first of many, right? I'm going back to the Ouroboros, right? The snake that eats its tail, that there's constantly life, death, and rebirth. We're constantly going through these cycles, right? We could not, no one, I don't think, can go through the whole metamorphosis or change of whatever they need to confront or change in just one sitting. I'm hearing there's levels to this shit, right? There's cycles. But there's this acknowledgement that the old me has passed away. Something I'm hearing Justin Timberlake and T.I. The old me is dead and gone, dead and gone. Yeah. right? Is this acknowledgement. And interesting, last night I watched on Lifetime, I think it was. It was a movie that they did by Terry McMillan, the author, where this young girl, she was the protagonist was a young gangster rapper, but she was a female as opposed to a male, had gone into, have, got incarcerated, did 4 months. While there, met a pastor, and then her and this pastor became an item. And the conflict and the contradiction to, like, the church community and the society and all that, because once we put a label on somebody, I'm hearing, we said, well, no, that's a gangster bitch and she will forever be a gangster bitch, or that's the pastor's kid, or and he's always in the pulpit with suits and that's in shoes, and that's how they preach, and that's how they will always preach. Well, no, that's a lie. I know when I was in seminary, I remember hearing of a pastor who curses in the pulpit. That was in New York, which wouldn't surprise me, right? And why I'm from BK myself, Brooklyn in the house, right? But no, I don't have to follow someone else's modus operandi. And that was another thing that they brought up in the previous reading, was the harm we do to ourselves when we keep trying to fit our selves into molds that were not molded for us. We're all so unique and different, right? But the point is that the way you'll know this and the way you can actually actualize this is through this metamorphosis, is through this self-reflection, this introspection, this confrontation of past hurts and pains, and maybe for some of us, abuses, right, of different kinds and sorts. And now I'm also remembering there is this test that if you have like 10 of these, if you've undergone 10 of these, they're like, I apologize, I'm forgetting what they, indicators, for lack of better language right now, and if I find a test, I'll put it in the comments, but it's for children, right? Children, well, adults, you can be an adult taking it, but if in childhood you went through these, you experienced these different markers, then you were classified, oh God, it's letting me look it up. Okay, I'll be obedient. Let's see if it comes up with it. When I say markers, they thought, well, the point is that, there you go, 10 adverse childhood experiences. They're called ACEs. Thank you, Spirit. And it's a quiz. And if a child experiences 10 of these specific events, they can be considered at high risk for long-term health problems, which can manifest, listen to this, as emotional, behavioral, and physical symptoms late in life. The 10 ACEs are physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, living with an alcoholic or drug abusing household member, a household member with a mental illness, witnessing domestic violence, a parent being divorced or separated, and a household member being in prison. And I'm sorry, that's like a great percentage of America right there, if you ask me, right? Which household really didn't see at least one of these, right? At minimum. But that, and that's what Spirit is talking about. So it is telling you as an adult to go back to your childhood self, right? So, many of us grew up and didn't even, I didn't know that there was this quiz called ACEs. When I, I remember when I encountered it, years ago, and it was exposed to me again. When we begin to dig deep, we think that we're going to be hurt or that it's going to hurt us so much. But no, what it does is it unravels a whole new world of resources and possibilities. It began to place labels on things that I felt that I thought I was so alone in, that I thought I only experienced, right? And what I found was, no, I'm, trigger warning, but I'm not crazy. There's a label that describes what I was feeling, like even survivor's guilt, right? Survivor's remorse, trying to improve my life within a community and even a family structure that, again, not blaming them, but because of, our situation and all of the, systems and all the complexities that we were surrounded in, would see me as a traitor, or I'm thinking I'm better than, or because I wanted to, have this metamorphosis, create change in my life, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I wanted better for my children and for myself. So, there's something about, once again, Spirit, you think that the pain of remaining the same has outgrown the pain of wanting this change. And again, what I'm hearing is, and it's true, I'm not lying, I wouldn't get on here and say this, I don't do with the clickbait, I'm not getting paid for YouTube. I don't have any subscribers really, this isn't, I'm not depending on this for my livelihood, you know what I mean? So this isn't something that I need to just spew just to, try to trick somebody or convince you of something different. I had numbed and escaped, embraced myself so long, trying to prevent myself from feeling a pain that in my mind seemed so much bigger than what I promise you what it actually turned out to me. It felt like it was going to be so much more horrific, so much more painful. And I'm not saying that it wasn't painful, but nothing compared to, what I thought. It's almost like with any fear, typically, we think that, I don't know. For me, I remember motorcycle. I almost crashed the motorcycle, so I jumped off of it, and it terrified me. And I remember that instructor coming back to me and saying, if you don't get back on the motorcycle now, you'll never confront this fear, and you'll always be fearful of the motorcycle. And although I was trembling when I got back up on the motorcycle, and my heart was beating out of my chest, literally, and in my mind, I'm like, you're crazy. What are you doing? What are you doing here? But I just did it anyway. And I was riding smooth the rest of the class and was able to continue the course and get my motorcycle license. But I would have deprived myself if I would have allowed the fear and the thought of what I thought might happen. The what if, right? It becomes like this big boogie monster, right? This big thing of fear, this big pillar, I'm hearing this stronghold. And it isn't as typically, I'm not saying in all cases, I don't know your story, but it wasn't most of the time the ones that I've confronted thus far as painful as I had magnified it. In my head, it would have been a 9, and I might have experienced a 6 with that subject, that behavior, that thought system, that boogie monster, that fear that I faced at that time. So then going back to responding and reacting, right? What do you want to say about that, Spirit? I had it on the tip of my tongue, and then I feel like it's so many thoughts, so much comes by so fast. The only control we have, okay, here we go, is in how we respond to the hand we are dealt. So there you go. It was in the writing. I just heard the writing is on the wall. Everything you need is already there. Like, and I'm hearing you already know. Um, and then you don't have to do this alone, right? So my journey has been laced with what I would call earth angels, right? Mentors, friends, family members, and therapy. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I've used multiple resources, right? Including divinatory practices like runes and tarot readings and prayers. So, yeah, it has been a multitude of these things, right? Um, so that's another thing. You don't have to do this by yourself. And the falseness of not confronting the fear is that you think you're in control. It gives you a false sense of control. That's why this card is so significant, right? Because I spent most of my time overthinking, thinking, and rethinking almost every conversation and interaction I had with people on a daily basis. One of the things of like the survival mode of fawning is not only do you learn to people please, but you become Inspector Gadget, meaning you learn like a FBI or a special ops person how to read facial expressions and mannerisms. You learn how to read people in rooms immediately because you're very in your mind as a child, survival depended on it. So as a result, yeah, I built this gift where I could read rooms and read people, but it was also the poor choice of words, curse, I would say a double-edged sword. There you go. Again, to not just keep it airy and fairy, because again, it's the two can it can be both, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. But so I tried to control every situation, every single person I encountered. I would think of the situation 5 steps back, 5 steps forward, 5 steps to the east, 5 steps to the west. I would, like Doctor Strange in that movie, he said, I calculated all the scenarios and it was, I don't know, 1 trillion times, and in all of them we lose. I don't know. I would calculate the situation. After a conversation, I would beat myself up or replay the conversation and say I should say this, I should have said this. Before the conversation or the big meeting, I would do that. It was maddening the whole time. It was a survival mode, trying just to control, in my mind, the outcome, which never, it was really never, it was a false sense of control. And it kept me reacting instead of responding, right? I was reactive all the time, defensive all the time. It was rare I could, just sit at peace. If you would have asked me in my 30s if I knew what it meant to have a regulated nervous system, I would have not, or did I have ever experienced a regulated, and it's not funny, it's just, I don't know, that just, it was a deep, profound sigh of relief that came out when I said that. I would have said no, or I could look back to very minimal times, and off the top of my head, moments with my grandfather were moments of, I believe, a stable, regulated nervous system. I felt like Sadeisms, the band Sade, the song "Cherish the Day." I would cherish those moments with my grandfather, and in his arms, I would feel safe and secure. My trips to Puerto Rico, my island, would be another moment in time where I would feel safe and secure. And at certain moments with certain specific mentors or prayer partners, in those brief moments, I could say I would feel, a sense of what that regulated nervous system would feel like. But most of the time the machine was going, right? The madness, the survival was going. And it's not until recent that I learned to, and still am learning to, thrive and what that means. And this is just the beginning. I'm looking forward to so much more. So that's the thing. And what I'm hearing is from you know, spirit or the universe or whatever your ancestors, sacred consciousness, your higher self, is that this is something that is open and available to us all. It is not a privilege that only some could have. And of course, I don't want to be ignorant to know that some of us are in more precarious situations than others. And if that's your situation, you know, I send in so much love, and my desire is that you find the courage as well as the resources necessary to get the help that you need. But for those of us who are ready at this very moment, and for this metamorphosis, then it is asking you to dive deep and confront what maybe you have intentionally ignored and repressed, numbed, or escaped for many of years. Again, the reminder is that you're not by yourself, that when you commence this, you are responding rather than reacting, right? And as a result, it's inevitable change. I'm hearing about this song by Otis Redding, change is gonna come, right? So yeah, that's the second part of this message, or maybe there isn't another part, I don't know. But this is where I feel, yeah, we're coming to the closure of this piece of the puzzle, I heard. For now, I am being instructed to look at the bottom of the deck. Oh, wow. So I have to cover her some because of the nudity, which is such a shame because it's such a beautiful card. Oh, my God. But I'll do my best to still show it. But at the bottom of the deck, look at this. Creative power. And it's a pregnant woman. And I'm covering the top because you know, her breasts are exposed. She's covering them with her hand, but I don't know how YouTube is. But yes, you step into your creative power, your authenticity. That's the result. I promise you. That is the result. Maybe I shouldn't promise. God forgive me. I don't know. It's just, I don't want to assume anything, right? But I'm telling you, from I can only share my experience, that the deeper I have gone, and the more I have reflected and confronted, the more powerful I have arisen from it. Confidence levels, creativity levels. I mean, even the confidence to turn on this video and to do this, I would have never, right? Even though as a child, I always, but you know, that was through the circumstances kind of beat out of me or repressed. So to be able to step into this space again, to be able to you know, love myself, to feel worthy, to know that, you know, my past holds behaviors and things, but you know, but that wasn't my essence. That has nothing to do with my essence. That I am entitled to in all the inalienable rights that are to be afforded to a human being, you know, the dignity and the respect. And it's not about me. I'm not trying to make this message about me. I'm saying that this is available to you, to all of us, right? And it says at the bottom, release your alchemical I can't make this sentence into the world, because yes, like in the previous, so then Spirit used that it's an alchemical reaction, that you're the philosopher's stone, right? Because again, and I've seen it within my own family, my own community. Yes, because you do this, you will repel some, and some will egos will get puffed up, and people will unfortunately fall off, right? Or you will have to cut them off as a result of this process. But the ones who remain, and then the ones who re-enter, oh my God, it's mind-blowing. And when you show people by example, as opposed to, preaching at them and yelling at them, and but when they see that you have undergone a metamorphosis, when they, oh no, that was Jenny from the block, and now she up here, you know what I'm saying, doing this 444. And I looked on the timer, I saw it does inspire others, and it gives them permission to do the same, right? Because it becomes realistic. It's like, wait, I knew her, I know him, I know they was hanging with us. They was, and that's something that happened in that movie by Terry McMillan last night. That's one of the things her girlfriend said at the end. Well, I saw that once you started going to that church, you changed. So we went there too this same day, and hoping that we can change too. It does, it does. You become this walking inspiration. I'm hearing this living, walking, breathing testimony, right? That's the beauty of it. All right, beloved, that is it for this message. I just looked at the deck. It just keeps getting better and better. I don't want to let go of it. Moving forward. And what is this one? Yes, a new perspective I'm hearing. Yeah, your world opens up in a whole new way, right? Yes, because you looked at these false beliefs, right? Now you have the wisdom, you understand, right? That, and oh look, it's a coming home, right? It's a home going. I'm here. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Yes. Okay. That's it. I'm done. I promise this time. I feel like James Brown, where he wants to say he's leaving the stage, but then he comes back and they put the coat over him. He just doesn't leave. Now I'm seeing Eddie Murphy on SNL, Saturday Night Live, for people who don't know what the SNL is, when he did Bathtub. James Brown. Maybe you want to watch that just to laugh, right? Maybe your spirit and your ancestors or your higher self is saying, it's not going to be all fear and boogie months. You will laugh too, right? Beloved, this is where we part for now. And it's been, again, such a wonderful honor holding this space with you and for you. I'm so grateful to this sacred consciousness that allows for such beautiful opportunities. I want to admonish you, or no, they say don't do that. Lightly suggest, I'm hearing, for you to be yourself on purpose. Understanding that you are sacred, beloved, and are worthy of all things good. Have a beautiful day or evening on purpose. And until next time, Amen, Amen, and Ashe.